What is going on, YouTube people? Neo Cards and Comics here today for not the weekly sports card market update. We're going to do a 1 year look back. I figured since this falls on the eve of the new year, rather than looking at charts and graphs for the last week or two like we typically do, we would look back for the last 365 days. It's fun to like play in the micro game and see like the little individual changes on a week to week basis, but I do like looking back on a macro level at some point in time, kind of see how these cards moved. So this will be a charts and graph heavy version of the air quote weekly sports card market update. Not much in the way of news stuff to really chat about this past week, really since the Topps 101 fiasco, backdoored cards nonsense from about 10-12 days ago. That since then, on the sports card side of things have been fairly quiet. Last time I said that blew up. The fun thing that I have been doing is watching Prism first off the line breaks. I plan on doing some sort of little video once I see some more of those pop up and have some time to kind of sit down and like break down what was pulled from a case or two and do a video on that. So that'll maybe be something we'll look at this upcoming week. But it is Prism time. My Prism blasters should be here any day at time of recording. And we'll go ahead and rip those on the channel and be sad about it. And I'm sure we'll have some more look ahead, look back sort of things. Honestly, the biggest story in collectibles is the CGC stuff. I know it doesn't necessarily affect the sports card side of things, but the sanctity of grading has been essentially called into question in the comic book world. And, you know, whether it's not a sports card thing or not, it is a pretty big deal. Before we jump into the full charts and graphs, do not forget this video is sponsored by our good friends over at COMC, channel partner. If you have stuff laying around that you want to get rid of, send it off COMC, get it off your desk. I am in the process of putting together another submission for them as we speak. I was off work this past week, and part of that was cleaning up the desk area. I was sorting through the cards that I pulled from those various box breaks that I did about a week and a half ago, and just trying to get things back in shape to start the new year in regards to my personal space. And a big chunk of that is going to be sending off another shipment to COMC to get this stuff out of here. Even if you don't have cards to sell, lots of good deals to be had on the platform. A lot of cool stuff on there. Maybe you could find something that you have been looking for. And don't forget, if you're looking at COMC cards on eBay, you could typically buy them directly on the COMC platform for a little bit cheaper. With that being said, let's go ahead and dive into market movers. Link in the description down below if you want your own version of charts and graphs. Let's start with football. This is the market pulse. I have looked at this, occasionally throughout the year as we've moved through the football season. This is what I have on the screen is 2017, 2018, 2020, and 2021. So I skipped over 2019 just because of it's basically just Kyler Murray in that class. And what this market pulse is comprised of is the rookie quarterbacks from those years, their Optic Hollow PSA 10 and their silver field level PSA 10. Excluded silver prisms on this because of the weird nature of them as you move from year to year, whereas Optic Hollows and field level silvers are more consistent over the years compared to prism silvers. The print runs have been drastically different on prism silvers depending on the year that you're looking at, specifically 2018. And then 2017, there was no base rookie, so that kind of makes things a little bit weird. So that's what it ran with. Normally, we look at this at from the beginning of the season or the last couple weeks. When you stretch this out to the entire year is where it gets really interesting. So now that we have this stretched out through the entire year, you see an interesting trend, and this is something I've been talking about for years, that any football cards you have before the season starts that has any amount of hype or built-in expectations on them, you should probably sell before the season starts. Now, if you're taking prospecting flyers on someone, that's a little bit of a different story. You're buying that backup quarterback for pennies on the dollar in the hopes that maybe they crack the code or someone young up and coming that hasn't got any bounce to them yet leading or through the offseason and heading into the season. But what we see here is what I talk about all the time. So this is going back to to January. We got Super Bowl nonsense going on, playoffs still going on. But generally speaking, on a macro level, these trend up. The 2018 lags behind a little bit. That's Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield as the primaries in there. But the rest of the more modern guys, the young hyped guys, those continue to trend up as we move throughout the summer, leading up into the national and then into the beginning of the season. And then we get here in September-ish, and what do we see? The season starts and nosedive central. We go through zero and then down into the negatives. 2018 actually stays pretty steady, and lately it dipped down as well, but then it's actually been coming back up again, mostly because Josh Allen's gone on a little bit of a run, Lamar Jackson's an MVP candidate, and Baker Mayfield's actually been playing pretty well to close out this season. So the 2018 guys are actually on the rise back up again. But when you run through these, the 2021 index over the last year is down 47%. 2020 index is down 30%. 2018 is down 20%. And the 2017 is down 30%. And 2017 is basically just Mahomes and Watson. So this is why I've made that statement every year that if you have hyped guys, you need to move them like between the national and the start of the season and just get out. It is not worth the risk carrying these guys in the season. Sell them here. If you really like the player, buy him back here. It's that simple when it really comes down to it for football stuff. But you could see that trend line on the way up and then whoop, right back down again. It's to me, it was almost eye-opening looking back at the last year's worth of data on this to just kind of see how this runs. Up next, let's look at just some silver prisms in general. This is kind of eye-opening as well. Crazy times here. 365 days once again. This is all PSA 10 silver prism rookies. I sorted this by what has increased the most dollar value wise. Not surprising, Brock Purdy on the top of the list, Tua on the top of the list, Christian McCaffrey, Tyreek Hill, Jared Goff, Brandon Ayuk, position player. Trevor Lawrence, PSA 10. That's a weird one because of the population counts. Deebo Samuel up a little bit. CD, Drew Lock, TJ Watt. Other than Brock and Tua, very few quarterbacks on this list, mostly positional players. And look at how quickly this drops off. The highest up number is $390. And then it drops down to the 200s and then a bunch in the $100 range. And then we very quickly drop below $100. And this is only showing 20 cards. The 20th card on this list is up $5. So it is not a deep list in regards to cards going up. If I reverse this, oh boy. Top of the list, Josh Allen down $4,000. Last one sold in September. This is what I was talking about with 2018 silvers. They are ghosts. This is only a pop 26. So we could kind of, that's an outlier one. Let's kind of move that to the side. Patrick Mahomes down almost $1,000, $850 down over the last year, 23% decrease. Then we see Burrow down almost 40%. That's an almost $800 drop. Herbert down almost $700. Fields down $360. Huge drops, 40%, 40%, 60%. Lamar Jackson down slightly, even though he's playing really, really well right now. Desmond Ridder down 93%. Justin Jefferson hurt all year, down 40%. And you could see the numbers are a lot bigger and they don't drop quite as quickly. If I go to the bottom of this list, which is 20 cards deep, we are still looking at $100 or just under $100 drop. We got Jerry Jeudy there down 86%. Saquon Barkley down 28%. Mac Jones down 72%. Even Micah Parsons is down quite a bit. He's having a pretty good year. Deshaun Watson down a ton. Sam Howell down a ton, just recently benched. So ugly, ugly numbers on the football side of things. Mostly quarterbacks on this list. Less position players. Justin Jefferson, obviously, hurt all year. Garrett Wilson had the whole Aaron Rodgers debacle. Who else is on here from a positional player? Derrick Henry, actually having a pretty okay season, but no one cares about the Titans this year. Micah Parsons, that one's a little interesting going down that much. Saquon, Aiden Hutchinson, and Jerry Jeudy, but less positional players on here, more quarterbacks on here getting absolutely decimated. On the super high end, iconic cards, was curious to see what Tom Brady had been doing over the last year. This is his BGS9 rookie ticket auto. Last one sold in October, so it has been a hot minute. Probably a more recent sale. This will be a little bit lower. Down 26%. The first one of these sold this year back in the end of January. Some of these rare cards don't match up exactly end to end, but you get the general idea there. Down 26% on his rookie ticket auto. His Bowman Chrome base, down just about 4%, has actually stayed relatively flat in the grand scheme of things. The paper-based PSA 10 is down about 30%. And then, once again, looking at Mahomes, his 2017 Silver Prism down 23%. Opticalo actually holding up pretty okay at down about 2%. So that one seems to be holding on a little bit tighter compared to the Silver Prism. I think Mahomes is going to be the story at the end of the season here. They did not look good last week at all. Body language looked off. Just a team does not look like it is playing together at all. They look very vulnerable. And even though his cake is halfway baked, there's a lot of stuff already in there. He has the MVPs. He has the rings. We all know how this is going to play out. If they go out in flames in the first round of the playoffs or something like that and look bad doing it, his card prices are going to get affected. There is still a ton baked into his prices. I've been saying it for years. He is not immune to this stuff just because he has already accomplished some things. So just kind of keep that in mind. Let's switch gears here. Look at some baseball. I pulled up some first Bowman autos of, just some trendy guys to see what they've done over the last year. Juan Soto down 25%. I believe these are all PSA 10s. Yes, these are all PSA 10 first Bowman autos. Just the base, not the refractors. PSA 10 Soto down 25%, and that is with the recent rally because his stuff was even lower, but with the trade to the Yankees did give him a little bit of a boost here to kind of close out the end of the year. Below that, Julio Rodriguez, the Wonder Boy, super hyped coming into this past season. Started slow, finished strong, but down almost 40% on his PSA 10 first Bowman. The two rookies of the years, Corbin Carroll and Gunnar Henderson. Corbin, PSA 10, up 135%. Went from $400 to just under $1,000. Still selling cheaper than at J-Rod. And then Gunnar, a couple people down there, less of an increase, only up 20% year over year. And then really the story of the middle part of the season, besides Ohtani going crazy and then, getting hurt, was Elly De La Cruz. He was sweeping the nation for a hot minute there. Not so much these days, as he got kind of exposed a little bit in the second half of the season. His first Bowman prospect auto, which at one point in time was over $2,000, is only up slightly, up 5%. For a hot minute there in the middle of the summer, he was going to take the world by storm, and then he ended up just barely being up but when everything was all said and done. And then last but not least, if you see him, call the cops. His face is on a milk carton these days. Wander Franco, first Bowman, started the year at just over $1,000, closes the year at $129. That is at almost 90% drop in a year, and probably going to go lower. If you haven't heard, they basically the authorities are on the manhunt for him. They raided some homes, and he is on the run. So not a good look for old Wander Franco's stuff. We barely knew you. Next up, let's look at some iconic cards, or what, I just kind of pulled some random, more established, I don't want to say straight vintage. Some of this stuff would be considered that, but just more like kind of staples of the community. We went Nolan Ryan, 68 tops, PSA 7. This is the rookie and stars. It's basically his rookie card. Currently at 3K, basically stayed flat throughout the year, down about 5%. The reason I went with 7s is because they sell frequently enough to get some good data in there. You go super high, they don't transact often enough. Tony Gwynn, just kind of curious, just picked him kind of out of the blue. I've been Tony for whatever reason. Tony Gwynn has just been on my mind lately. I ran into a cool card of his at a local show a couple weeks ago, and it was one of those ones where I'm going to come back for that, and I came back for it. It was gone, and I was kind of pissed at myself. It was an Essential Credentials raw that someone had in their case for what seemed like a very good price, and I hesitated and messed up. 83 tops, Tony Gwynn, PSA 10, up slightly, up 10%, basically holding steady. Griffey, 89 Upper Deck, PSA 10, up slightly, up 20%, sitting just under 2K, up from just being in around 1.6K at the beginning of the year. Ichiro, 2001 Topps Chrome traded, not the base version, up barely, basically staying flat. Was 1.3K at the beginning of the year, slightly under that, ends the year slightly above that, a $50 increase, nothing wild there, but holding, which in a world where in previous years, everything was going down, it is nice to see some of the blue chippers, shall we say, kind of hold steady year over year. Albert Pujols, 2001 Topps Chrome traded in a PSA 10. That one is down slightly, down 30%, was 1.7, down to 1.2, a little bit of a 27% drop there, give or take. And then Mike Trout, 2011 Topps update, down 24% in the year over year. Trout obviously had another rough season in regards to just injuries, playing time, etc. Seems to be aging. Ohtani's gone now. Not sure where that's going to leave Trout. Does he demand a trade? Do they look to move him, or does he just stay there as the face of the franchise to sell some season tickets as he moves into the back half of his career? It'll be interesting to see if he just never has another full healthy season again, how much that affects his stuff. His peak was obviously amazing, but like it or not, he doesn't really still, I've said this over and over again, he just doesn't have that signature moment or moments. It is what it is. Some people hold that against him, some don't. Regardless, there's just not hype around his stuff at the moment. Maybe that's a buying opportunity. Maybe it's a time to still get out while you can. Switch over and look at basketball. Once again, we did the silver prism experiment here like we did with football. Going up on the green side, Joker, number one, up almost 1,000, or almost $800, 40% increase year over year. Jimmy Butler up a decent amount, not surprising with the finals run. He kind of finally got the respect that he deserves. And then it gets super random, super quick. Cam Thomas, this Austin Rivers one is not sold in months. You can ignore that one. Embiid up slightly. Austin Reeves up slightly. Tyrese Halliburton up 40%. SGA up 30%. Both those guys 100% deserved. They are having great starts to their season. De'Aaron Fox up 72% year over year. He had a fantastic playoff run and is having a fantastic start to this year. Tyrese Maxey up 47%. So we see a trend here of guys that, either people hated on for a hot minute or guys taking that leap. The two Tyreses, Maxey and Halliburton, SGA, these guys that were not superstar status that are now gaining that attention. Not saying that they're like LeBron level or anything crazy like that yet, but you get what I'm going for here. They are leveling up from being really good players to all-star level players, and very quickly. And their prices are adjusting for that, which honestly is good to see. We got Chet Holmgren down here, obviously taking the league by storm this year as well. Sengun having a really good year. But once again, as we saw with football, the top of the list doesn't even crack $1,000 in the green, quickly goes to 500. Then we're in the hundreds. We go 20 cards deep and we are up in the $40 range. Once again, if we flip this around the other direction, we see a completely different story. The bottom end of this is a $200 drop, just 20 cards in, and we see some massive corrections here. Giannis Silver down 40%, Leonard Silver down 45%, Dame Silver down 40%, Zion down 70%, Luka down 40%, almost from 1.9K to 1.2. LaMelo Ball down 60%, Tatum down 40%. Who else do we got? Devin Booker down 45%. Klay Thompson down slightly. Jalen Green down 80%. He's been meh Paolo Banchero, Anthony Davis down 20%. Cade Cunningham off to, he's actually playing okay. The Pistons are just an absolute dumpster fire, down 50%. Ja Morant down 30%. He obviously had the gun thing in the last year. My boy Evan Mobley started the season off slow and then got hurt, down 70%. Draymond Green, absolute head case, down 25%. Jaylen Brown, down 55%. So some huge swings on the downswing. And it's the reverse of the guys that are coming up. You know, like Jaylen Brown, Zion, Ja, Luca. They were all the next guys that were supposed to grab the reins until they're not. And then now we're seeing the money filter towards the next crop of guys that are supposed to bounce back up. Be interesting to kind of see how this year plays out. I think a lot of this as well that we do have to factor in is the NBA was the most hyped of everything. So it still had the most to correct out of all these cards. It will be curious to do this again at the end of 2024 and see what the movements look like year over year for those. Same thing on the basketball side. Let's just kind of look at some of the more iconic / important cards. Jordan PSA 10 86 Fleer, last one sold in early December, has basically stayed flat throughout the year after having a massive correction in 2022. You can see that's the light blue line here. It was up slightly down, but ends the year at about where it started it. LeBron Topps Chrome Refractor PSA 10 down 32%. Giannis Silver PSA 10, we just talked about that one, down 40%. I just wanted to include that here for comparison's sake. Luca Blue, I went with the blue because I wanted a high-end Luca on here, down 40%. Kobe 1996 Topps Chrome PSA 10, down 20%. And then the Bird Irving Magic PSA 8, down about 20%. And that, like I said, that's on a PSA 8. Once again, I have to use a card that transacts a little bit to be able to get a good trend line on it. Last ones of those sold just a couple weeks ago in the PSA 8 grade, one of the more iconic basketball cards outside of the 86 Fleer. So just some random ones that I chose out just to kind of get a little mix of some of the older stuff, some of the newer stuff, and some of the mid-90s stuff with the Kobe in there. So that's where that kind of stuff sits. You can see, once again, kind of what I was just talking about. The iconic basketball cards are still correcting from that super crazy pump that happened during COVID. When we looked at the iconic baseball stuff, that was much, much more stable. So kind of interesting comparing those two things back and forth. So that's it. Just a quick market year in review, not all encompassing, you know, just a general quick look at some of the cards that kind of show the general trend of where things are going and where things have been, and some important cards here and there. Hope this was interesting. Hope 2023 treated you good, and 2024 we start off with a bang. All I got for you boys and girls. Back to the regularly scheduled weekly sports card market update next week. See you then. Peace.